world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
And we are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It is Tuesday, December 23rd, as you are listening to this. We're 2 days away from Christmas. And we've got a lot of shit to talk about because there's always a lot of shit to talk about. Now, I know some people are hoping for an early Christmas gift, and we would get the demise of Donald Trump for Christmas. I don't know if that is going to happen. And we'll get into Donald Trump's health later on. But there's other things we have to talk about today. Now, Donald Trump woke up this morning in the middle of the night, and he was doing his typical late night, early morning, true social tweeting, whatever you want to call it. And of course, he went after the New York Times. Now, he comes out and he attacks the New York Times. He says they're a failing paper and they're fake news, and why would anybody read them? And he goes after them for, I'm assuming, the Epstein files. That makes sense, right? But who knows what exactly they said this time to piss him off. They're always pissing Donald Trump off because they report the news, and he doesn't want to hear the news because it's not good for him. Right? Donald Trump only cares about positive stories and everything else. He doesn't want to hear negative stories, and the people around him are keeping those negative stories from him. Now, he's attacking the New York Times, and he is calling them an enemy of the people, which he has said before. And of course, he is also trying to say they are a national security threat. That seems to be his new go-to buzzword. He thinks he gets some play by saying things are national security threats and that it somehow gives him some cover that he can turn around and use that to end up getting access to certain things or to do things a certain way. Now, this isn't this is Donald Trump attempting to do things and go ahead with saying that they're a national security threat. I don't know if his end goal is to try to get the New York Times shut down for writing these stories that are negative to him. He would probably like that. But we have freedom of the press in this country. And despite whatever Donald Trump may say or whatever they may claim, the media is allowed to print what or publish or post or whatever, pretty much anything under the guise of being news. This is how we have places like OAN, Newsmax, and Fox that can turn around and publish things that are categorically false or mostly false, and nothing actually happens to them. They can Places like OAN, Newsmax, Fox, they all do the same thing. They can run whatever story they want. Remember, there were times with Joe Biden where they would frame the shot in a particular way. They would cut out and edit out part of a frame to make it look worse than what it was for Joe Biden, or they would only tell part of the story. And that's what the media does, right? They do all this. They make it these certain parts of the media, they can print whatever they want, they can publish whatever they want, and it doesn't matter if the president doesn't like them. We have freedom of the press. Now, freedom of the press was put in place because before the American Revolution and leading up to the American Revolution, the King of England was going around and he was going after newspapers because that's mostly what they had back then. But newspapers against that were writing things that were against the king and that they would have considered treasonous, and saying, well, basically, um, you can't publish that because it goes against the king. And publication was one of the things that turned the tide in the American Revolution. By using the media and by getting people on board with um, what was going on, by publishing things like Common Sense by Thomas Paine and other things. That is one of the ways we won the war. Very famously, George Washington uh, would use code inside the papers, and sometimes that's how his spy network was able to get information out and things like that. And if we didn't have freedom of the press, the war might have turned out differently, or if those things hadn't been published. But Donald Trump wants to go against the New York Times. He wants to go after them because he's afraid of what they will publish, right? This isn't the first time he's gone after the media. Now, you think the media would learn, okay? He pushed against ABC Disney with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel cracks jokes, and Donald Trump doesn't like it. He gets offended, and they try to shut down Jimmy Kimmel. And the backlash from trying to shut down Jimmy Kimmel cost Disney billions. And I know lots of people have canceled their Disney Plus subscriptions, for example, and have yet to renew them. I myself am one of them. I have been thinking about renewing it, but that's only because, there's a few things on there I do want to watch. But for right now, I have no need to renew it. I can watch other programs. It's not a big deal. So he goes after Jimmy Kimmel and it backfires. Okay. He went after CBS. They kind of caved with a lawsuit, but Donald Trump is going after the media in a big way. Now, he went after the BBC. He filed a like $10 billion lawsuit, something like that, against the BBC for defamation, despite the fact that what they were publishing is true. The biggest claim against defamation, or the one way to prove that it wasn't defamation, is to print the facts, print the truth. And um, that's what's going to end up saving the BBC. So Donald Trump goes after the New York Times, and he's calling them the enemy of the people. He's done that before. They're not. Um, it's more likely the enemy of Donald Trump. And saying they're a national security threat, I don't know what that is going to accomplish, unless he thinks by declaring him a national security threat, he's going to somehow be able to turn around and um, save everything and make it better for himself, right? It's not going to work. He's not going to be able to shut down the New York Times. He's not going to be able to do any of that. He may try, he may want to, um, but it's not going to work. And I think the Republicans need to take notice of what he is doing. But I think they're so entrenched here, they don't know which way to spin, which way to go. They just have to continue to defend it till he's no longer relevant or no longer in the picture, because they don't have anybody. They don't have anybody to replace Donald Trump when he is gone. We talk about it all the time, but his MAGA base, that 30% of the Republican Party, um, they won't vote for anybody that's not named Donald Trump. They just won't. And what's going to happen there is that Republicans are scared that without Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, without him being part of the party, or if they turn on Donald Trump, that they're not going to get reelected. So they defend him when he does stupid shit like going after the New York Times. Now that's not the only thing that has happened recently when it comes to the media. We have this story about CBS and pulling a 60-minute clip, or a 60-minute expose, I guess, on CCOT, that prison in El Salvador, the one where Donald Trump and this administration thought it was okay to send American prisoners to. And a lot of cases, the people that were being detained, their main crime was being in this country illegally, which the punishment for that should just be deportation back to their own country. not uh, incarceration, and especially not incarceration in a separate country. We had never, prior to Donald Trump, shipped prisoners off to a foreign country. Well, 60 Minutes was going to do this expose, and they decided to pull it because it was going to be bad for Donald Trump, apparently. And CBS has been kowtowing to Donald Trump for a while now. They've that Stephen Colbert and the Tonight Show, they're going to let it go at the end of the year. I don't know if they're going to try to bring the Tonight Show back with a different host after Colbert's concert or contract is up. Um, but that's a problem, right? CBS has been kowtowing to Donald Trump, and by pulling this just proves that they're worried about whatever backlash could come from Donald Trump. And I don't know why, because if they're reporting on something that is factual, again, that's the biggest defense against any claim this administration would have is the truth. But they don't care about the truth anymore. The 60 Minutes used to go after both political parties pretty much evenly. And if one side did something fucked up, they talked about it. If the other did something fucked up, they talked about it. Didn't matter who was in power, didn't matter what was going on there. They just said, no, we can't deal with it. We got too much going on, and we're gonna talk about the truth here. We're gonna talk about whatever's going on. We don't care who's in power, right? But now they're kowtowing to Donald Trump, and they pull this 60 Minutes episode and decide they're not going to do it. Well, what happens? In Canada, some affiliate stations of CBS already had the 60 Minutes spot, and they had that time allotted for 60 Minutes, and either they didn't get the memo or didn't care. I'm not sure which, or not entirely sure, but they aired that CCOT expose. It got published. Now, this is embarrassing to Donald Trump, which is good. And beyond that, it is now out. Apparently, you can find it on YouTube. Now, I have not gone looking for it, but from what I am hearing about it is just as every bit as bad as what you think it is. It is um they talk about being physically abused as one of the prisoners does. Talks about there being urine and blood and all this stuff going on there. Like that there were no uh it wasn't very sanitary. There weren't beds. It was very inhumane. And this is what Donald Trump doesn't want out there. Now, like I said, apparently you can find it over on YouTube. Um, and that's bad news for Donald Trump. He doesn't want this thing to see the light of day. CBS, for whatever reason, wanted to protect Donald Trump. I don't know if it's because they're trying to just maintain their profit levels or what, but they think by kowtowing to Donald Trump that they're doing something and they're saving themselves when they're really not. It's not helping here. Um, Donald Trump is uh, hurting himself in this case by doing things like this or by putting pressure on CBS. He just looks even more guilty, and it's no shock that people are not believing the narrative spin that is coming out from this administration. Um, Now, the other night we had an announcement come out from Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, and they were talking about this new class of battleship that they are going to build. Apparently, they are going to call it the Trump class of ship. And it is supposed to be, I'm not even sure. I got lost in the math, but like 20 times bigger, 30 times bigger than the biggest battleship we currently have. It is supposed to be able to hit targets 80 times farther away. All this, that, and the other thing. Here's the thing: battleships are, and fighting traditional uh, battles like that are mostly a thing of the past. We are now in a different era of warfare. It's a lot of drones, and it is um, a lot of long range things. Now, sure, these battleships may be able to launch drone missiles and things like that, but we don't need as big of ship as what they're pushing. Not to mention, you would need, for these big ships, you would need way more crew. It's going to cost way more. But they don't care about that. Now, I want to know where the money is coming from. I don't think Congress has approved money for new ship design, but they are talking about these ships being $15 billion each. And they think they can actually have two of them up and ready to go by 2028 when Donald Trump leaves office. Now, that's pretty ambitious, considering they don't even have a design plan for these ships yet. And Donald Trump is going to be part of the designing of this ship. Yeah, that's about as dumb as it sounds. What's he going to use? Are they going to have him design it out of Lego and then build it, you know, based on that design model? What does he know about designing a battleship? Well, nothing, but that hasn't stopped him before. Remember, he didn't know fuck all about building a casino, and he overrode the architects and the experts when he built his casinos in Atlantic City. That they were a problem, right? Like uh, he didn't know what he was doing, but that never stopped him before. Okay, he turned around, and he's going to be part of this. Now, the idea that popped in my head, it's an old reference. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I encourage you to go. It's a quick Google search. We'll bring up the result, and you'll get the image of what I'm looking for or what I'm talking about. But there's an old Simpsons episode where Homer finds his long lost half brother, and this guy had a car, not a car dealership. He was a car manufacturer, and he was rather successful. Well, he decides he needs something new and innovative, and he needs something that would appeal to the everyday person. And he thinks, for whatever reason, Homer is the everyday person. And he lets Homer design a car. And that car ends up bankrupting Herb, period, because it's a complete and total disaster. And I mean, once they drew it up, they should have seen based on his drawing in crayon that it was going to be a disaster. But Herb thought, okay, this is going to work. We're going to go with it. It's going to be great. And then it wasn't. Okay. So they go ahead and it ruins Herb. And that's what Donald Trump designing these battleships is going to be like. It wouldn't surprise me if this design ends up not being watertight or something dumb that they set it out and they need to be replaced within a couple of years of launching or whatever. That it's not going to work as well as he thinks. Most ships take years of designing. And yes, one of the things that they're saying about why they need to do this gold fleet of uh, new battleships is because the other ships that they have been trying to work on have been years behind schedule and so far over budget. And Donald Trump thinks he can come in, he'll design it, they'll get it done on time, and everything is going to be grand. But there's so many problems with that. Where are they going to get the materials? Where are they going to get the funds to do it? Are they going to just redirect other funds because that's what this administration likes to do, is redirect money around and move it around, trying to get things better, um, something like that. I don't know. And then are they going to do, uh, um, what? How are they going to make this work? How are they going to do the product testing? How are they going to get it actually built? What are they? They're going to have to hire people, and yes, sure, that would be great for the economy because they'd be putting people to work building ships. Problem is, you have to pay them a certain wage in order to be competitive because shipbuilding is a fairly competitive or fairly physical job. And if you're not paying competitively with other jobs, you're not going to be able to get it done for minimum wage. People aren't going to do that. You're not going to get it done probably, unless you're paying above market rate to get people willing to do those demanding jobs. But see, they're not thinking about that. Donald Trump wants to come out with this new name of ships. He's naming it after himself, much like everything else. Um, but he also thinks this makes him look like the tough guy. Okay, he thinks he looks tough by launching a new line of ship. He's not tough, and he doesn't realize the kind of joke that he really is. Now, normally, ships, while individual ships are named after people, and we have had ships named after former presidents and things like that, um, we typically don't name lines of ship after a person. Um, but Donald Trump is all about getting stuff named after himself because he is worried about his legacy. That's why he's putting in the ballroom. That's why he is building or wants to build the Arc de Triomphe, which will be known as the Arc de Trump. That's why he put his name on the Kennedy Center. He is so worried about uh, getting things named after himself and worrying about his legacy that it's not funny. Now, I saw a creator on TikTok talking about this, and it was a good idea. Um, this we should capitalize on Donald Trump and him worrying about his legacy and having everything named after himself. And what do they mean by that? Well, simple. He wants everything named after himself, and he wants to do all that. Well, then let's just pass a couple bills. Maybe even if he's still president after the midterms when Democrats are in power, call it the Trump Healthcare Reform Act or something like that, and make it universal health care. Because one, he would never read it. He wouldn't care what's in it. The fact that it would be named after himself, he'd probably sign it, and we could get universal health care that way. You could do universal school lunch nationwide by calling it um, the Trump School Lunch Program, naming it after himself. The Democrats could play into it. Now, I really don't care. Like, if they do that, that'd be great. And because of the results of the things that they would have accomplished. And I wouldn't care that they named it after Donald Trump, because down the road, they could always pass a law when Trump is gone, renaming those things away from Donald Trump, especially with how bad his legacy is going to be, because he is not going to be remembered very well in history. He's going to go down as one of the worst presidents, if not the worst president in American history. Um, After his first term, he was already rated 45 out of 45. Um, and that they put him there at the very bottom. He is below William Henry Harrison, whose claim to fame was giving a 3-hour speech in the rain on Inauguration Day and dying like 31, 34 days later, something like that. The man who barely got out of bed because he caught pneumonia and didn't do anything during his presidency other than be sick and die is a better president than Donald Trump. That is a feat. Now, Donald Trump is all worried about his legacy. We've talked about how I said his legacy is going to be horrible. And part of that has to do with the Epstein files. Now, Todd Blanche can't seem to get his story straight. He's a deputy attorney general, one of the ones taking point and talking about the Epstein files and things like that. And he comes out and he says that the reason some of these images were taken down, like there was an image that was taken down uh, within a day of it being put up with the Epstein file, the limited release of the Epstein files we have had so far. It got taken down and then it was put back up with some redactions. And he said, well, we didn't have everything redacted, but it was a picture that had Donald Trump involved. And they go, well, then he was asked about the redaction. So you're saying the only faces and things that are redacted are victims, right? Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're redacting the names, the identities of the victims. And he goes, oh, so there's this picture here of Donald Trump with 6 or 8 women and all of their identities are redacted. Does that mean that Donald Trump was with the victims? Well, no. And he stumbled and tried to backpedal off of it. They can't get their story straight. They don't know which way to turn. They are trying to defend Donald Trump being in the files, and they can't do it. Now some other things have been released. They've released somewhere between 11,000 and 30,000 new documents. Most of them, no pictures this time. Most of them are just documents. Um, However, there was one where they did not redact Donald Trump's name. There was a woman in there I believe this was a police report. And of course, they want us to believe this was planted. It was fake. It was a phony report where she says she was assaulted by Donald Trump specifically. And they want to ignore that. Part of this other release is that there are 10 co-conspirators they've mentioned, and they haven't done anything with those co-conspirators. And Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and others want us to believe that there's nothing to investigate, that there were no co-conspirators, that Maxwell and Epstein trafficked these women only to Epstein and Maxwell. But now there's evidence from the DOJ saying that there were co-conspirators, but they hadn't been charged yet. Well, why not? Why were they never charged? Well, under Donald Trump's first term, he had control of the DOJ, and they were looking into Epstein, in part, and they had started the trial on Maxwell because Donald Trump didn't have an iron grip over the DOJ this time. Why? Because the DOJ hadn't started looking into Donald Trump. But why didn't the DOJ continue going after the Epstein abusers, the client list, etc., when Merrick Garland took over? Well, if the January 6th investigation is any idea, if that is any sort of a roadmap into what he was thinking, that would mean he was looking at it going, well, yeah, we can't do anything because it's political. If they were high class political figures or wealthy people, etc., they're like, well, it's kind of political. We need to let the political side handle it, and that's why Merrick Garland never went after any sitting members of Congress. He didn't go after Donald Trump. He didn't go after Ginny Thomas or any of the others from January 6th. He said it was all political. But that's the point of the DOJ. The DOJ is supposed to go after criminals. So why they should have been going after people in both the January 6th case and the Epstein case, and they just didn't. Now, the way I understand it is the crimes that we are talking about when it comes to the Epstein Island and things like that, that there is no statute of limitations. Now, there may be a statute of limitations for the cover-up, and that may be 5 years. But that means that'll be well past the end of Donald Trump's term and into the next Democratic president. So Donald Trump is going to have to deal with that. He is going to have to deal with potentially having criminal liability hanging over his head again unless he gives himself a pardon or unless he pardons the people around him. And the people that are involved in this cover-up, they may be facing criminal liability as well after Donald Trump is gone. But they've released 11,000 to 30,000 more documents, and it continues to get worse for Donald Trump. Now, in these 11,000 to 30,000 more documents, first of all, they're violating the law with this cover-up. The law very clearly says they had 30 days to release everything, and they could only redact certain things, and they were supposed to admit why they redacted certain things. And they're not doing that. They're redacting full pages of stuff where there is literally nothing available to see. Every line is crossed out, or in some cases, the entire image is blacked out. Now, of course, we are hearing that they have screwed up, right? Because of this, that's what this administration does. And they need to, they were supposed to redact it a certain way. Well, now we are hearing some people have been able to copy the text from these documents into other editing programs and unredacting them because they didn't redact them the right way, things like that. And I haven't gone looking into the files that deep myself. I'm going by what I'm seeing from other people there. But I'm not surprised. Now, Bill Clinton, who has been one of the people that they have gone after the heaviest with these Epstein files, because Republicans think we actually care about Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton has not been president since 2001, almost 25 years ago now. He hasn't been politically relevant since his wife ran for president in 2016. And even then, it was a footnote. The focus was on her, although some people were saying that that was an actual thing in her benefit, that he was going to be part of the administration because of his, experience being president, that he could help her out, even from just the position of first gentleman, that he could give her advice all he wants, etc. Which that isn't a bad take, but like I said, he hasn't been relevant for 25 years. And they're trying to release a bunch of photos proving that Bill Clinton had something nefarious going on. And there's a lot of images that could be explained away as simply Bill Clinton being in the wrong place at the wrong time and just knowing Jeffrey Epstein. Now, knowing Epstein in and of itself is not the crime. Being complicit and doing things with minors is. And so far, none of the evidence that they have released about Clinton has led to us to believe that he did anything wrong with any of the minors. So Bill Clinton comes out and says, release it all. Let's do it. Release everything you've got on me. He goes, I'm ready for it. So there's a lot of speculation about that, about why he is saying that, why he is doing that. Is he trying to just set up Donald Trump and suggest that he needs to give up or whatever, that he needs to go ahead and do the same and say, hey, Donnie, I was willing to have everything released about me. Why aren't you doing the same? Is it that he isn't afraid of what's in there because he knows he's exonerated because there's not that he ever did anything wrong? That could be, other than just knowing Epstein. That is an entire possibility. There's so many things that are possible here, and Bill Clinton could just say, "Fuck it, you know what? I did it. It's time. I'm held accountable for the evil things I did or the bad things I did. Um, it's coming. It's going to come out anyway. Let's get the accountability over with. Bring it on, and if I'm going to be held accountable, let everybody that is also in there be held accountable as well." And that could potentially be a thing. So Bill Clinton is calling for the release of everything that he is in there on himself, and that we will have to see how the DOJ reacts. But like I said, the DOJ has been trying to implicate Bill Clinton in something far worse that has been going on, and trying to say that he is somehow complicit in all of this, that he did way more than maybe they can prove. I don't know. Now, the DOJ has been releasing some things that we have been able to prove are fake. There was an image released of Diana Ross, Bill Clinton, Michael Jackson, and three faces that were redacted. Come to find out, it's Michael Jackson's two sons and Diana Ross's son, and it was all above board. However, they redacted it like it was some big thing, but that was a photo that was already publicly available. You could go find this one. It was some promotional photo for something or another, and they tried to make it out to be something nefarious. So we've known that they have been releasing fake things, but now they want us to believe that anything in the files that mentions Donald Trump is either fake, it's uncorroborated, it's a straight lie, or anything like that. I mentioned earlier how there was a document in there that claims Donald Trump assaulted a woman, a young girl, and they want us to believe that is fake. Well, there's also a postcard that was sent from Epstein to Larry Nassar. And Nassar, you might remember, is the Olympic coach who got caught for abusing young girls. I think it was girls, but young children he was training for the Olympics. And he was serving, I think has served or is serving time for doing that or something like that. But he's disgraced for all of it and everything else. And Epstein sent him a postcard. Now, it got apparently went out in the mail right around the time Epstein died. Now, there's still some speculation as to what happened with Epstein, whether he took himself out, whether he was taken out, or what happened there. Um, but in it, he says that he's going to take the short road home, which implies that maybe he was going to you know unalive himself, and that the only thing him and Nasser had in common, or that one of the things they had in common, was that for their love of young women and helping them mature into women or something like that. But it also says in there that the president is on their side. They said Epstein specifically says our president is on our side and he believes in us or something to that effect. And while he doesn't specifically say Donald Trump, Trump was the president at the time that was sent. So it implies that Donald Trump was um, the president he was talking about. But the DOJ wants us to believe that that is fake, that that wasn't real, that no, he wasn't talking, that they can't prove that that came from Epstein. Now, some of the funnier comments I'm seeing from uh, some of the MAGAs on there is I've seen one or two that are trying to say, well, no, it wasn't real. It was a plant. I agree with the FBI and the DOJ saying it was a plant because it's not even in English. It was in English. It was just written in cursive. Now, I know there's a whole section of people in this country who probably don't know cursive, but that is just funny to me that they um, are now willing to try to say that it is some foreign language. And it just shows how far they are willing to go to cover up or to bypass things for Donald Trump. But more and more is going to come out about everybody involved. Now, Donald Trump was also giving remarks about um, the Epstein files. And he said, let's see if I get this right here. He was rambling about the Epstein files. He says he doesn't like pictures of Clinton being shown or really anybody being shown. It's a horrible thing that they're doing. They shouldn't have to release it all. Um, but that they're going to release everything. But he's always liked Bill Clinton, never had anything bad to say about Bill Clinton, which is true. One of the weird things, for as many things as he had horrible to say about Hillary Clinton, he never said anything horrible about Bill Clinton, which reignites the speculation. Remember, there was that email that was leaked a while back about from Epstein to his brother saying, does Vladimir Putin still have those emails about or those pictures of Trump blowing Bubba? Well, one of Clinton's nicknames is Bubba, and he says, "Hey, um, now that this comes out that he always liked Bill Clinton, he never said anything bad about him, and doesn't want the pictures of Clinton released. Is he trying to protect Clinton? Is there other reasons why he doesn't want things involving Clinton released? Maybe it's true that Clinton was Bubba. we don't know here. Um, Trying to see here if I have some notes over here. But this whole situation, I think ultimately, and I've talked about it a lot, the Republicans are going to end up having to walk away from Donald Trump. They just are. They are. They're going to have to walk away, and they're going to have to move on to something else. Um, Now, when they decide to move from Donald Trump, if they decide to impeach or remove him, whether it's impeachment or the 25th, or if they force him to resign, all of those come with risk. They come with problems. Impeaching Donald Trump, unless they use the fact that he is in the files as their justification to that MAGA base that we've been talking about, the MAGA base that Donald Trump has so expertly cultivated, that will believe and hang on to everything Donald Trump has said or done. Um, I don't know what else they're going to do there. You know, they have to find a way to separate MAGA from Donald Trump because they're worried about getting reelected. Everything that politicians do ultimately is about getting elected. Okay. So if they decide to walk away from Donald Trump, they have to do it in a way, and using the Epstein files might be that way that would separate MAGA from Trump. But we're hearing that they are talking about going, the Republicans in Congress are talking about going to a judge and filing contempt charges against Pam Bondi for uh, not releasing the Epstein files in compliance with the law. Now, that's a very real consequence, but they only need like 5 to go with all Democrats to pass anything. And that's entirely possible that they do that next year. We're also hearing that they could be potentially um, going to use a discharge petition to go ahead and get um, impeachment articles through against Pam Bondi for her handling of the Epstein files. Now, she may be the first cog in the wheel, right? It wouldn't, but what I'm saying is the impeachment of Bondi could lead to the impeachment of others. Now, I've said for a while now, and I believe this 100%, that the Republicans in Congress will not side with Democrats as long as they have the Senate, unless they already know that they have the votes in the Senate to end up um, getting uh, Donald Trump or whoever they impeach removed. Okay. They would need about 20 Republicans in the Senate to side with all Democrats to get rid of anybody, to remove anybody. Now, uh, if they decide to, if I think before they hold a vote on articles of impeachment and send it to trial in the Senate, I think they're holding closed door meetings, talking with the senators. And if they have the votes, that's when they move on somebody like Pam Bondi or Kash Patel over the Epstein files. And it wouldn't surprise me if the defense that they try to put up in the Senate for not being removed is, well, Donald Trump told me to. I was following the orders of the president. No, I'm just following orders has never been really a good defense for anything. However, we haven't accepted it since the Nuremberg trials in Germany, which even though that was not American law, that was German law. Um, it set up this idea that I'm just following orders. You can still be held accountable if you're not following, uh, you know, the law anyway. That doesn't absolve you of your crimes. So I think if Pam Bondi and them could try to use, well, I was just listening to Donald Trump as their defense, and I think once that is in the record, beyond that, if the Republicans decide just to use Donald Trump and his connection to Epstein in an impeachment proceeding, same thing as what I was just talking about with Pam Bondi. It won't happen until they have the votes in the Senate in order to um, go ahead and remove him. Now, I had heard a while back that Nancy Pelosi had said there wouldn't be a third impeachment of Donald Trump, and that they wouldn't waste the time doing it because Republicans wouldn't go along with it. And I'm glad Nancy Pelosi is leaving Congress, in part because that's the wrong way to look at this. They should impeach him again. If he has committed high crimes and treason, they need to impeach the motherfucker, remove him. Holding constant impeachment inquiries when the Democrats get power back, even if they don't always lead to articles of impeachment, you can hold public hearings and you can try to turn the course of public opinion against not only Donald Trump but the Republicans that supported him. Man, look at this dumbass. Look at what he's been able to get away with. Look at what he's done. Those kind of things, right? They don't necessarily by just saying, well, we're not going to impeach him and we're not doing it again because the Republicans won't remove him is the wrong way to look at it. If you are looking at seriously gaining major wins in the House and the Senate and having power for a long time, like I think is possible, you need to completely and totally show that the Republican Party is, as it sits right now, is an extension of Donald Trump. And that's what these impeachment moves could be. They could use it to prove that the Republican Party is nothing but complicit for Donald Trump. They could. And when they do, then they need to figure out where they go from there, right? Like, how do the Republicans rebrand and get away from this image? And I think it's going to take them a while. Now, Democrats need to come in over the next 2 to 4 years. In the midterms, they need to push affordability, going in and holding these Republicans accountable, those kind of things. And then they need a fighter in 28, somebody willing to talk about holding everybody accountable, fixing the economy, running on an FDR style message of building the economy up and making sure everybody gets a fair shake. And I think that's going to happen. But then they need to go through and actually do it and hold everybody accountable. You need somebody in the DOJ willing to turn around and hold everybody who was complicit with Donald Trump accountable. Hold those that allowed him to destroy the East Wing of the White House accountable. Those in Congress who allowed Donald Trump to just do whatever he wants accountable. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be held accountable for things that Donald Trump has done when it's all said and done, if we get the right person in when the Democrats are back in charge. That I think Republicans are scared of that eventuality. They really are. And we need to make sure that they remember that this is an eventuality that can and will happen. Republicans need to be afraid of Donald Trump or of the fallout from Donald Trump. And they're not right now because they seem to think it's going to go on forever. Donald Trump himself seems to think he's going to go on forever, that he's going to be able to rise from the ashes somehow and run for a third term. I don't know that he makes it. Now, I said earlier we were going to talk about his health. It's not looking good for Donald Trump. He was seen walking down the steps of Air Force One, kind of tapping his leg. Like, was he trying to wake it back up? Had it just gone to sleep? Was he making sure it was working properly? It seemed weird. And then he was walking very gingerly, holding onto the railing. The epitome of looking like an old man. And this isn't the first time we've seen him have issues with his legs. We've seen him appear to drag his foot. We've seen him not be able to walk a straight line. He's had other problems. I've talked about it numerous times lately, but when he was in Japan with the Prime Minister of Japan and they were supposed to walk together side by side up to the Japanese and the American flag, turn, bow, and then move on to the next spot and do whatever they were supposed to do in the next thing. It was a ceremony they were trying to do. Well, Donald Trump kind of shuffles along ahead of the prime minister because he doesn't like sharing the spotlight with anybody. He didn't think he should be walking at her pace or alongside her. He wanted to be ahead. But then he kind of gets up to the American flag. He kind of weakly salutes it and just keeps going. Now, why he feels the need to constantly salute is beyond me. This is a man who has dodged a draft 5 times in his life. He avoided going to Vietnam, always claimed bone spurs or some other medical reason to get out of Vietnam. Um, but he does. And even the prime minister of Japan had this shocked look on her face, like, I can't believe you just did that. Donald Trump is not well. He talks about taking cognitive tests and how he's aced at least 3 of them and all of this. I don't know that he holds out until 2029. I mean, he may survive till Christmas. A lot of people seem to think that they were hoping that they would wake up Christmas morning to the one big beautiful obituary. I don't know if that is going to happen. But it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't make it through next year because of the stress of everything going on, the Epstein files, the economy failing, Supreme Court turning on him, all kinds of things. Because I think the Supreme Court is going to turn on him when it comes to these tariffs and stuff. And as the Supreme Court starts to side against Donald Trump on numerous things, he's going to get weaker and weaker because his whole hope with everything was that he would get it before either the right judges or his handpicked Supreme Court, where he appointed a third of the court, and he thinks they owe him something. That, well, I gave you that position. You need to rule in my favor no matter how bad it is. And I think the Supreme Court uh, is going to start realizing how weak Donald Trump is, and they're going to start worrying about what comes next, about what happens when Democrats get back in power. They may be worried that if they don't start shaping up a little bit, uh, that the Democrats may just pack the court, go to 13, put on 4 liberal justices, and rebalance the court. If for nothing else, that would uh, make things more advantageous. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about quickly before I wrap things up, there's apparently the Kennedy Center Honors or Award Show or something tonight, I believe, um, happening at the Kennedy Center. And I refuse to call it the Trump Kennedy Center because that was never approved by Congress. Donald Trump just decided to slap his name on it. And writing your name on something doesn't automatically make it yours, despite what Donald Trump may think. And Donald Trump was, I know this is hard to believe, he was actually joking on Truth Social. But Donald Trump ever being the one to want ratings and to be the best at things and wanting people to admire him, had said, well, I'm going to be doing the Kennedy Center Awards. And what do you think? Should I give up the presidency and just be an MC full time? Now, I'm pretty sure he was joking. But if he is serious and that if this goes well and people actually respond positively to him being an MC, let's see if he'll go with that. He will end up uh, actually moving on to being an MC full time. That would be funny, um, and that would be Donald Trump in a nutshell. He's all about ratings. He's all about performance. He's all about admiration for or people having admiration for himself. Maybe we can turn around and let him have this moment, right? And if it works out and he's willing to resign, I say let him. Sure, we'll get JD Vance, but as I've said before, JD Vance is nowhere near as um, bad as Donald Trump, and we can work with JD Vance because at least JD Vance wouldn't have the mindset of a toddler and wouldn't have the uh, the Congress in his back pocket, like Donald Trump seems to have right now, until they realize it is a sinking ship and they need to abandon it. All right, so that is going to do it for the Analytical Iowan podcast. I hope you have a great day. I will be back again tomorrow on Christmas Eve with another episode, and I will probably have a Christmas episode as well. Um, Currently planning on doing that. Might do a live on TikTok Christmas night. I haven't decided. I did one on Thanksgiving, and that worked out halfway well. I had pretty good turnout for me, so maybe I'll do that again. We'll just have to see. But I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk with you again tomorrow.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.